Hey y'all, and welcome back to Well Joined Wednesdays. I am your host, Coach Ty, and I am here to bring you real talk about real wellness for the real you. Okay, whether you're tuning in for the first time or you are returning for another episode, I want to thank y'all so much. All right, I'm excited to continue to talk about wellness and some things that are very important. We have an amazing show in store, so make sure you might, need to get your notebook, your pen, a glass of water, just so that you're able to get comfortable and listen and take notes to all the good stuff that we'll be talking about today. So, last episode, we talked about seasonal affective disorder or depression, and we also talked about vitamin D. And this time, we're going to be talking about cervical cancer awareness. Before we get into that, let's do some wellness wisdom of the week. So this week's wellness wisdom is simple, but it's very powerful. Your health is your wealth. Okay? Taking care of your body is an investment in your future, and regular screenings, whether that be screenings for like in the with your blood work, whether they be Pap Smear screenings, which we'll talk about a little later. There's so many different screenings that we can get to try to get ahead of a problem because prevention is better than a cure. So let's make sure we're putting our health first, and that's your wellness wisdom of the week. So for today's episode, like I said earlier, we're diving into a topic like cervical cancer awareness that doesn't really get talked about a lot. I don't know if you all knew, but January is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month. And so we're going to talk about what cervical cancer is. We're going to talk about the screenings for it, which is a Pap smear. We'll talk about prevention, and we're just going to talk about how you can take control of your reproductive health because this is very important for us as women, okay? So in honor of Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, let's get into it. Cervical cancer is cancer that starts in the cells of the cervix, which is the lower part of the uterus that connects to the vagina. It's one of the most preventable types of cancer because it does have screenings that you can do pretty often, like the Pap smear, and there's also a vaccination for it, which is called Gardasil, and we'll talk a little more about that. So we just discussed that cervical cancer or cancer is cancer that starts in the cervix, and we're going to talk about how we can get it. What are the risk factors? What makes us more likely to get it? So one of the things, and please bear with me, y'all, this is a very long name. One of the things that contributes to cervical cancer is called human papilloma virus, or HPV for short. So I'm sure you might have heard of that in your doctor's office. If you go to the gynecologist pretty often, I'm sure you've heard of HPV. And again, that is the virus that is one of the major risk factors for cervical cancer because there are hundreds of different types of that virus, but there are a few that are more dangerous. Okay, so when you get your screening with your Pap smear, we can check for that virus, which will let you know if you're at an increased risk of getting cervical cancer. Most people will be exposed to human papillomavirus or HPV at some point in time. It's very common to get it. Although it's sexually transmitted, we don't really refer to it as a sexually transmitted infection or disease in the same way we might refer to chlamydia or gonorrhea. So although it's sexually transmitted, it is not a disease, okay? And I know it gets a little confusing, but like I said earlier, it becomes dangerous when you have one of those dangerous types. Okay. Like I said, there's hundreds of different types, and not all of them are dangerous that can lead to cervical cancer. So, again, I know this is a lot of information, y'all, but just remember human papillomavirus. And that's why I also said you might want to take some notes because you might want to do your own research just to get a little more information about what it is and how it leads to cervical cancer. Another risk factor is smoking. Smoking weakens the immune system, so that can increase the risk of this virus, the human papillomavirus. And another thing that can lead to or makes you at an increased risk of getting, whether it be the human papillomavirus or even the cervical cancer, is when you're not getting screened for it. So how do you get screened for it? How do I check to see if I have HPV or cervical cancer? So ladies, this is why it's very important for you to go and see your gynecologist yearly, because you're going to get this screening done, which is the Pap smear. You're going to get it done at your gynecologist's office. The Pap smear is going to be a test that checks for abnormal cells on the cervix that could become cancerous. All right, I'll repeat that again. A Pap smear is a test that checks for abnormal cells on the cervix that could become cancerous. And with the Pap smear, a lot of times, depending on your age, your doctor will add on HPV testing, which will detect the presence of those high risk HPV types that could lead to cervical cancer. So let me back up for a second. We talked about cervical cancer, cancer in the cervix. We talked about one of the highest risk factors for it, human papillomavirus or HPV. How do we test for HPV? We test for HPV by going to our gynecologist, getting a Pap smear done, which is going to check for those cancerous cells on the cervix, but it's also going to check for HPV. And based on that result, we'll know if we have one of the high risk types that could end up giving us cervical cancer. So, at what point should you start getting your Pap smears and HPV testing done? Well, that's going to depend on your age. Most young ladies should start getting their Pap smears done at 21 years old. Okay? Regardless of your sexual activity. Some doctors will say if you're not sexually active, you may not need it. Whereas some other doctors will say, okay, you're 21, let's just get the process started. So it's up to your gynecologist. Of course, depending on the situation, please talk to your doctor specifically and ask what they will recommend. And this is another thing I want to mention to you all. In no way do I ever want to replace the opinions or the advice of your doctor. Okay, so if you have a doctor who, let's say whatever condition we're discussing, you're familiar with it and your doctor has told you something different, please be sure to listen to what your doctor is saying specifically, because there's always exceptions to the rule. I'm just giving you the most general information, hoping that you would do your own research and of course ask your own doctors to, get a better understanding of some of the things I may be talking about. So let's back up to screening. Okay. So we talked about screening. We'll start at 21 years old, depending on the young lady. And then assuming everything is normal, assuming the Pap smear is normal and the HPV results are normal, then the next screening will be in another 3 years. Okay. And that did change within the past, I think, 10 to 15 years. Those guidelines have changed because I remember before you used to get Pap smears every single year. So every time you went to the gynecologist, they would do a Pap smear and they would do HPV testing. But that has changed. Research has shown that these cancerous cells, let's say, God forbid, a woman does have those cancerous cells, they're not going to form that quickly within a year. They're going to need a few more years to kind of become cancerous. So that's why they figured, okay, let's not make it every single year. And if you ever had a Pap smear done, it's not the most pleasant experience, ladies. So, researchers found that we can wait a little while. Now, the only thing is if your Pap smear comes back abnormal or if it comes back HPV positive, then you will most likely have to repeat it the following year, or the doctor may want you to have a little more extensive testing. And that's pretty situation specific. Okay. So I just want to make that clear that although the Pap smears, especially when you start at 21, you'll get them every 3 years. It can be less than 3 years depending on what your result is specifically. And in that case, you should check with your doctor and just make sure that you know what's best for you in that case. So after age 21, once we get to age 30 to age 65, at that point, normally the Pap smear and the HPV testing will be every 5 years. Or you can get the Pap test done by itself every 3 years. And like I said, these parameters for the screening recommendations, they are situation specific. There are some cases in which, let's say, a 21-year-old will get a Pap smear. The doctor may not want to add on HPV testing. Let's say the 21-year-old is not sexually active, meaning more than likely they would not have been able to contract HPV in the first place. The doctor may say, we'll hold off on HPV testing. We'll wait until, a few years. Or you may have a doctor that just wants to do it all in one shot. So it really just depends on what your doctor is comfortable with your personal medical history is, and how your doctor wants to handle your testing. It may change, based on the situation. So please be mindful of that. So some other ways or some other things that are important is prevention, okay? Because as I stated, human papillomavirus or HPV is sexually transmitted, although we're not going to consider it to be a disease in the same way we would consider others. It is still something that we can prevent ourselves from getting. We can be a little more, cautious. There are vaccinations in place, and of course, that's your personal preference and decision if you choose to get a vaccination or not. So, the first step in prevention is a vaccination. And like I mentioned earlier, the vaccination for HPV is called Gardasil. And what it does is it protects against those high risk strains that I mentioned. Remember, I said HPV can have like hundreds of different strains of the virus, but there are only a few that are dangerous enough to cause cancer. So, what this vaccine Gardasil does is it protects against those high risk strains. All right. The ones that will more than likely give you cancer. So, of course, it's up to you. It's your personal decision for you and your children, because at this point in time, the vaccination is recommended for young girls from ages 9 to 26. So if you or a child or, a friend of yours who has a young child is of age, you can, of course, mention this to them. You can do your own research and decide if it's best for you. Some women choose to get it if they're in that age range. Some women won't get it because, the Gardasil vaccination is, I'm not going to say it's new, but I know when I was of age to start going to the gynecologist, it wasn't popular yet. It wasn't talked about yet. So some women feel more comfortable staying away from things that are kind of newer. But of course, that's your personal preference. And I'm always going to recommend that you discuss it with your doctor to see if it's something that they will recommend for you personally. Another way to prevent HPV or human papillomavirus is to have a healthy lifestyle. Okay. Try to eat healthy. Try to eat a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables, limit sugar intake, limit your carb intake, maybe even alcohol and smoking. Of course, we mentioned smoking being one of the risk factors. So if you do smoke, try to cut back or eliminate it entirely. That way you're putting yourself at a decreased risk of getting human papillomavirus as well as possibly cervical cancer. And like I mentioned, of course, smoking is very important to stop. So I hope you all understood cervical cancer and human papillomavirus a little bit better. It does get a little confusing when we talk about the different strains, when we talk about the screening recommendations, the ages. It's just a lot of information. So I hope I was able to break it down a little bit more for you. Sometimes the internet will be a little overwhelming as well, which is why I would recommend you speak to your doctor personally, to break all of this down for you. So that way you're totally clear about what your gynecologist will recommend for you. Hopefully you're up to date with your gynecology appointment if you're at that age where you're seeing a gynecologist. Even if you're not getting your Pap smear done every single year, you should still be going to see your doctor annually just to check in. He should still, or he or she should still be doing breast cancer screenings. They should be, checking in. How are you feeling? How is everything? How, are you getting a period normally? How has your bleeding been? Any pain? They'll also maybe talk about STD testing. If you're sexually active, that's something that you should be doing regularly, regardless of if you're in a monogamous relationship or not. And this is information that's important to me because I'm sure I did share with you all that women's health is very special to me. I worked in a women's health facility for about 5 years, and I think that's when I started my love of women's health. So when I learned that January is Cervical Cancer Awareness Month, I said, wow, this is amazing, because I'm very familiar with Pap smears and HPV testing, and a lot of other gynecological conditions, which we will get into a little later in the episodes. So yes, please be sure that you are checking in with yourself and your doctor, making sure you're up to date on your appointments, up to date on your screenings. And I know this conversation is not the most pleasant, okay? Who wants to talk about cancer and your cervix and viruses, and it's a lot of information, but it's also not the most pleasant. But as women, especially healthy women, well women, we need to have these conversations, and we need to understand when we go into a doctor's office, especially one for us specifically, like our gynecologist, we should be understanding what's happening. We should know what the device is called that the doctor is using to collect our Pap smear. We should understand what they're doing when they're swabbing us. When they're sending something off, we should know what they're doing. We don't need to know all of the specifics, but we should be advocates in our care. We should be very informed on everything that's taking place. And if we're not, this is one of the reasons why Well Joel Wednesdays was created, to give you a platform where you can tune in and not only listen in to what I have already decided to talk about, but you can leave a comment or subscribe to the page, or even send a message or DM on Instagram. Hey, Coach Ty, my doctor is saying I should get this done, or this is what's happening, but I don't really understand it. Can you talk a little more about it? I would love to do that. As a nurse, it was one of the things I saw very often, women coming into the office and not fully understanding things, and, feeling a little shy or embarrassed where they didn't want to ask, like, hey, can you repeat that? Or can you explain that? So that's why I'm here, okay, to make sure that you have what you need to take better care of yourself, and that you understand the information that is being given to you. So please make it a priority to call your healthcare provider, schedule your cervical cancer screening if you're due. Please, ladies, share this episode with a friend, with a family member, someone who maybe has never seen a gynecologist, has never gotten a Pap smear done. Please be sure to share this episode with them so it can shed a little more light on what they can expect, and also give them this platform as a resource so that, again, if they need something broken down to them or they want to understand something better, I'm aware of that so that I can bring them that information. So with that being said, y'all, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Okay. We talked about our health topic. Now let's talk about our wellness topic. Let's get into some tea time with Coach Ty. Okay. Tea time with Ty. We're going to do it. So today we're going to talk about something. I don't know if you heard of it. I'm sure you have. I've heard of it. I've even, participated in it a little bit just to see how it is. And it's something called ashwagandha. Okay. Ashwagandha. I don't know, again, if you all heard of this, but ashwagandha, and excuse me while I look at my cue cards, I want to explain to you what it is. It's called an adaptogen. Okay. An adaptogen. And it's been trending in the wellness world. And let's talk about why. So, an adaptogen is a natural substance, often derived from plants or herbs, that helps the body adapt to and resist the effects of stress, whether physical, emotional, or environmental. Adaptogens work by supporting the body's natural stress response systems, helping to restore balance without overstimulating or suppressing normal body functions. So, it basically helps to lower stress, whether it be physical, emotional, or environmental, by supporting the body's natural stress response system, helping to restore balance without suppressing or overstimulating the bodily functions, the normal bodily functions. So there's plenty of adaptogens. Ashwagandha is the one that we'll talk about today. And ashwagandha is one of the adaptogens that are very good for people that are dealing with chronic stress or burnout, fatigue or low energy levels, hormonal imbalances like PMS or menopause, and also immune system challenges. So Ashwagandha, it's also known as Indian ginseng or winter cherry, and it's a medicinal herb that has been used for centuries. It's prized for its adaptogenic properties, like we just discussed, because it helps the body to manage stress and maintain balance. And it comes in various forms, whether it be a powder, a liquid extract, or a tablet or pill. So I have taken it myself, y'all, just to be honest. I didn't take it by itself. I actually took it within a supplement package. It was like a few other supplements in one. And I took it, let's say, for 2 weeks. And I remember feeling very calm. Okay. I do remember that being something I noticed. And even before taking ashwagandha, I remember being on Instagram or maybe Threads, and I saw something, maybe even Twitter at the time. I saw something where there were a few people taking it, and they said how they had to maybe stop or take it not as often because they felt like they didn't have any emotions. Like the ashwagandha was just like calming them down too much. So it's funny because since I had already read that, once I had taken it for 2 weeks, I was like, now I think I understand what they're talking about. Cause I feel like I'm almost like too calm. Not that that's a bad thing, right? Of course, if somebody had maybe more stress going on in their lives, it would have been a perfect balance. But for me, I felt like, okay, maybe it's the other supplements in this, not just the ashwagandha, that has me feeling a little like too calm, if that makes sense. So I didn't feel like it was something I needed to keep taking. Because of course, adaptogens are good. Medicine and supplements and vitamins are good to calm us down. However, what we really want to focus on is eliminating whatever is stressing us out if we can, or minimizing that stress factor, whatever it is. So like, I think for me, because I had already did a good job of trying to like minimize my own stress and eliminating things or minimizing things that made me feel more stressed out. By the time I got to the ashwagandha, I was like, okay, I think I may not need this right now because I'm like too calm. And I just feel like not that I want to feel stressed, but I just needed to feel a little more emotion, if that makes sense. So, yes, please don't let my experience deter you from trying ashwagandha. Try it for a few days or a few weeks, see how you respond to it. Again, the priority should be to try and minimize the stress naturally, through our deep breathing exercises, through our boundaries, through just us doing things a little different. But if you do find that, you need something a little extra, definitely try the ashwagandha. Because like I said, it definitely helped for me. I don't think it's something I need to take every day. Maybe I'll do it every other day or every 3 or 4 days, based on what I have going on. But I will encourage it. So I will say I'm a fan, y'all. I'm a fan. Y'all let me know in the comments. Have you had experiences with ashwagandha? Have you heard of it? Are you interested in it? Is it something that you would personally, participate in or not? I'm just very curious. So please make sure y'all are leaving me comments, subscribing to the channel, telling your friends about the channel, telling your family members, because I'm just so excited to share this with you all. I'm getting more and more just comfortable in this space, and I hope you all are really getting some valuable information from what I have to bring. And like I said, if it's anything that you want to talk about, any health related topics, wellness related topics, please be sure to like the video, comment, leave a message, whatever is most comfortable for you. So that way we can, really talk about some things that are reaching y'all. So ladies, please take care. Thanks again for joining me. I will see y'all next time on Well Joy Wednesdays. Bye.